Hello and welcome back. Maybe for one last time before the summer break. I wish I could do this every week and make handicapping videos, but I have to be reasonable and think, how much time do I want to put into this if I could barely crack 100 views? Still, I want to talk about Zenyatta. She had an interesting career, and I thought I learned from her a few things from a handicapping standpoint. And I was never a fan of Zenyatta. I was more a fan of Rachel Alexandra. And I know people say you can like both. You don't have to like one. I was a fan of Rachel. I did not like Zenyatta when she ran, but I want to talk about her. She was one of the best closers I've ever seen in my life. And I did learn a few things from a handicapping standpoint. So let's talk about Zenyatta and what you can learn from her past performances. Now, the first point is hard to prove, but I thought that Zenyatta was not 100% for some races. What I mean is that John Sheriffs did not train her up to 100% for certain races, knowing the Breeders' Cup Classic was on the horizon. For example, in 2009, when she won the Clement L. Hirsch with a 99 Beyer, that was her worst Beyer of the year, until she won the Lady Secret with a 97 Beyer. And you could think that maybe she was going down in speed figures and maybe she wasn't ready for the Breeders' Cup Classic. But no, I think that John Sheriffs didn't crank her up for those races, and that's partially why she had those low Beyers. And then in the Breeders' Cup Classic, she had a 112 and won by a length over Gio Ponte. And then in 2010, she had roughly the similar trajectory. Her lowest Beyer came in the Clement L. Hirsch with a 95, and then she had a 101 in the Lady Secret. And then in the Breeders' Cup Classic, when she lost by a head to Blame, she had roughly the same figure, a 111. That's roughly the same figure as the 112 she had last year, or in 2009 when she won. So I believe that Sheriffs cranked her up for the Breeders' Cup Classic when she had to face males. But in a late summer race like the Clement L. Hirsch against Rinterval, she did not need to be 100%. She did not need to be 100% against Anniba's Creation. And we see this year. We saw this year with Baeza, trained by John Sheriff. Let's take a look at him. We saw back in February, Baeza had a 93 Beyer when he broke his maiden, and you wouldn't think that was fast enough to compete in the Santa Anita Derby with Journalism or Citizen Bull. But Baeza almost won that race. He had a length lead at one point, and he lost by 3/4 of a length in the end to Journalism, and he had a 101 Beyer. And reflecting back on the race, I think that Sheriffs cranked him up for the Santa Anita Derby, knowing that he needed to finish first or second in order to enter the Kentucky Derby. And even finishing second, he still needed a few defections to get in. But my point is, he cranked him up for that specific race because he needed to, because he wanted to enter the Kentucky Derby. And that's a handicapping lesson to learn, because some trainers only train up their horses for specific races, the biggest races. And so that's something to keep in mind when you're reading the past performances. Sometimes horses don't run their best race because they're pointing towards another race down the line. That's the first part of this lesson. The second part I want to talk about, Zenyatta always had to overcome a slow pace. Not always, but in most of her races before the Breeders' Cup, she would usually have to overcome a slow pace. And one big example is the 2010 Clement L. Hirsch. So, besides the fact that Sheriffs probably undertrained her for that race, she had to overcome 25, 50, and 115 fractions. Let's look at that race. You see the 50-60 1/2 mile? And Rinterval is on the inside. Zenyatta's making her move on the outside back in 5th. Right now she's about 4 or 5 lengths off the lead, but she's moving up. 115.11 for 6 furlongs. I know this is synthetic, but I still thought those were slow fractions. And Rinterval saved all the ground. Zenyatta had to go wide, and Zenyatta struck the front right here. But Rinterval's going to fight back because she had the benefit of the pace. Rinterval had saved up enough energy to fight back. It's not enough, but she still gives Zenyatta a scare, especially her betters. She gives Zenyatta betters a scare. And my point is that the pace didn't go fast enough for Zenyatta to have a chance at a fast final time. And again, the Beyer speed figure is based on final time, so how can you earn a fast final time if the initial fractions are 25.41, 50.61, 115.11 for 6 furlongs? How can you have a fast final time when you're going that slow? And in a number of her races, she had to overcome a slow pace, 24:48 for the Lady Secret that year. And back in 2009, she had to overcome 25:49 for the Lady Secret. And she had to overcome a 48 half mile in the Clement L. Hirsch. And in the Vanity Stakes, or Vanity Handicap, she had to overcome a 48 half. And I could probably point out a couple more, but the point is, they all knew Zenyatta was behind them, so they had to slow down. Except for the Breeders' Cup Classic against the males, they did not slow down. And so it was hard to earn a fast final time, because with slow fractions, it's hard to earn a fast final time. In any case, that's my second point. Sometimes she had a slow number because she had a slow pace ahead of her, and so she couldn't earn a fast final time, and therefore she couldn't earn a fast final speed figure. On that note, let's take a look at the 2010 Breeders' Cup Classic midway through the race, just to see how fast they were going visually. In the 2009 and 2010 Breeders' Cup Classic, she did get the right pace. Let's take a look at that race. I've talked about this before, but when the field is fractured like this, with the front runners several lengths ahead, and the closers and mid-pack horses all the way back there like this, then it's probably a fast pace. The reason there's that gap in the middle is that the front runners are going too fast, or the speed horses are going too fast, and we're going to see the rest of the pack catch up with them. And you see Zenyatta, I don't know which one is Zenyatta right now. I don't know, the view isn't good. Zenyatta, but Zenyatta had a setup, that's the main point of this. I don't care what the fractions were, you can see visually that she had a setup in this race. And I can't see, I think Zenyatta is the one with the shadow roll. Yeah, she's coming out right now. And you see Zenyatta, I have the cursor over her. Blame had better position though, Blame had a closer position in the middle point of the race, but Zenyatta still ran a great race. Zenyatta still ran fast, and she only lost by, what, a neck or something? She ran a great race, and that was probably the best she could have run, with the strong pace ahead of her. She did have minor traffic problems, but I still thought that was probably the best race she could have ran. And look at how sad her connections are. My point is, she had the optimal setup in the Breeders' Cup Classic, both in 2009 and 2010, and that's how she ran a 112 and a 111 on Bayer. She had the best setup she could have had for her running style. And it takes me to my final point and final message. My final point is that the speed figure doesn't always represent how fast a horse is capable of, or how fast a horse could have run. Either due to pace problems or trip problems, or maybe the trainer didn't crank up the horse for that specific race, the speed figure doesn't always represent the horse's true capability. And I think that's what a lot of beginning handicappers don't understand. You don't always want to look at a speed figure and think that's the best the horse could have done. Sometimes there are circumstances. Sometimes it is the best the horse could have done. Like I said, the 111 in the Breeders' Cup Classic in 2010, that was probably the best Zenyatta could have done. Or the 112 in 2009, that was the best she could have done. But there are certain circumstances where the horse could have run better, but for whatever reason it didn't happen. And that's what you want to note from studying Zenyatta's past performances. In any case, thanks for listening. Have a good summer, and maybe I'll be back in the next Derby Trail. I'll still be on X though.